Today, let's talk about website security. Now that we have our website up and running, I'd like to turn our attention towards website security. Now, what is website security? It's also called cyber security. It's basically about shielding your website from cyber threats and attacks. So this means setting up features and taking actions to help protect your data and those of your site visitors from cyber criminals. Now, looking at the website that we have created, it's a very simple HTML and CSS pages. There isn't really anywhere where we're collecting user information or where transactions are happening. So our site is probably quite safe from, cyber criminals, because there's not much they can really do with our website. There's no special access that they can gain to get other information. There's no database that our website is really connected to that contains any useful or valuable information. But it's still helpful to understand the whole concept of cybersecurity and what kind of cyber threats there are out there. Now, what are the threats and attacks that we should be concerned with for most of the websites? Now, you would understand that most of the websites that are out there are a lot more complicated than the cafe website that we have created for our project, right? Most of them would have login information. Most of them would allow users to make transactions online. They would have valuable information, maybe like FDU. They would have information about students, grades. They would have transaction information, things like that you would want to protect and can be really prone to malicious attacks. Okay, so now let's take a look at what are the threats and attacks that are out there. Malicious software, malware. Now, this is a common threat used by cyber criminals to steal the data and allow unauthorized access to your website. Okay, so if a search engine finds this malware on your site, you could be blacklisted. Your website may be removed from the search results, reducing your online visibility completely. So if you're an online store and you are blacklisted, that is a bad thing, right? Because you need to be visible online in order for you to make revenue. There's also the DDoS attacks. These attacks slow down your site or crush it completely, making it inaccessible for your site visitors. Okay? There's also vulnerable exploits, which involves attacking your website from weak points and then extracting data from your website. So there are threats to site visitors, such as stolen data, customer name, address, contact information are examples of data that they can steal. Other threats are spams and malicious redirects. Some attacks come in the form of links to malicious websites and then randomly redirects to other sites to drive traffic. There's also session hijacking, where hijackers or hackers can hijack a session and then force the users to perform unwanted actions on the site. Usually it involves accessing personal information like your credit card number and so on. So what are the costs of cyber attacks as you, a website owner, to you? There's operational costs, there's disruption in business operation. If your website ends up being blacklisted, then your customers will no longer be able to find you. There's also the cost of responding to and regaining control over your website after an exploit like that. It's very high. You might have to replace some hardware and software, hire IT experts, which means much higher costs. There's also reduced business value. So when your customers learn that the security of their data was at risk, by visiting your site, they may lose trust in your business. This affects your profits, share price, and overall reputation. And fines, yes, there are fines. Fines may be defined in the legislation if it is determined that you didn't take sufficient action to protect your site from hackers. You are legally bound to make sure that your site visitors, information is meant. It's going to be secure and safe. It is your responsibility as a website owner. So remember, your hosting service provider only protects your servers and not your website. One of the misconceptions is that once the web designers are assured of the servers that they're protected on, that their website is also fully protected. This is not true. So let's take a look at implementing login security measures. Now on our website that we created, there is no place to log in, but let's pretend that there is a place that, customers can log in and, have an account, and then they can order coffee beans from the cafe, okay? And then they have like a user account they can go into. Then they would have a login section, right? So for this login section, you'll want to enforce strong credentials. Keep a track of all usernames and passwords used on your site. Make it mandatory to use unique usernames and strong passwords, okay? So implement CAPTCHA protection. The CAPTCHA will limit the number of failed login attempts. Implement two-factor authentication. So after implementing two-factor authentication, you'll need to insert a code sent to your registered phone number before you can access your login area. You would find that this is the case in FDU, right? You would have to do the two-step authentication before you can get into Web Campus. So the next thing I want to talk about is installing an SSL certificate, a very important thing in website security. So first of all, what is SSL? Well, it stands for Secure Sockets Layer. It's an internet protocol for securing the data transfer between a user's browser and the website that they're visiting. Okay, so every internet user transfers information when they visit websites. So this information can be sensitive, like your credit card payment details, credit card information, login credentials. Using the normal HTTP protocol means that this information can be hijacked by hackers. So the server that I have, I don't have an SSL certificate, and that's why it's not secure. But that's okay because we don't have any sensitive information. I'm not collecting any data. It's really just a space for you to do this, a simple website for your class. But if I was to have a real website for a real e-commerce site, I would never have a website without SSL. Okay, so using the normal HTTP protocol means your information can be hijacked by hackers. So this is where SSL at HTTPS comes in. Websites need an SSL certificate issued by one of the recognized certificate issuing authorities. So this certificate is verified and highlighted in the user's browser with the padlock sign, the HTTPS. So you might have noticed, I'm sure you have noticed that when you look at our class exercises, the websites that you do for your class activities online on the server, sometimes it has this big warning like it's not secure, right? Because we don't have SSL for it. So imagine if you're going to a real website and this pops up. This would be like a real warning to the visitor, and they probably won't want to go to that website. So do you need an SSL certificate for your website? Yes, SSL HTTPS is recommended for all websites on the internet. It's absolutely required for all websites that collect user information like login details, payment information, and credit cards, especially if you're an e-commerce store, if you're a membership website, or you require users to log in at all. Most online payment services require your website to use SSL HTTPS before you even receive payment. So you won't even be allowed to be an online e-commerce site if you don't have SSL. SSL certificate also creates a positive impression of your brand among your users. Again, you can see from the example when you go to your whcyinmound.ca website, and then you look at your site on the browser, you have that big warning sign pop up. So not favorable, right? Google also recommends using SSL-enabled websites. These rank higher in search results, okay? If your website's not using an SSL certificate, then Google Chrome will show the users that your website doesn't, and it could be very alarming to visitors. So how does SSL certificate work? Well, it protects information by encrypting the data transfer between the browser and the website. When the user visits the SSL website, the browser first verifies if the website's SSL certificate is valid. Then if everything checks out, the browser then uses the website's public key to encrypt the data. The data is then sent back to the intending website, intending server, where it's decrypted using the public key and a secret private key. Okay, so how much does it cost? It really depends on which certificate authority, between $50 and $200 a year. But if you think about, all the other costs that comes with having your website hacked, then it's really not that much. Some providers offer add-on services with their certificates too, which affects the cost of your SSL certificate. So how you can get an SSL certificate for free though if you have a bit more technical knowledge. A lot of website owners before were reluctant to use the SSL because of this additional cost. So this left many small websites vulnerable to data and information theft. Therefore, a nonprofit project called Let's Encrypt decided to fix this problem by establishing a free certificate authority. So the purpose of this certificate authority is make it easier for website owners to get a free SSL certificate. The internet then becomes a safer place for everybody. Okay, so this is for the common good. So due to the significance of this project, it quickly earned the support of major companies like Google, Facebook, Shopify, WordPress, and many others. So installing this free SSL certificate by Let's Encrypt for a beginner can be quite difficult because it requires coding knowledge and server systems knowledge. Okay, so therefore that $50 to $200 really isn't that much money when it comes to achieving more security for your site and not having to deal with all this technical stuff. Okay, just remember the impact of a hacked website. Hackers redirect your visitors to their malicious site. It causes a jump in the bounce rate and declines in the time people spend on your website. Pop-up ads on your page or illegal files stored on site servers make your website slow. Search engines will realize that people are leaving your site way too fast, and they might see this as a sign of a bad website, one that doesn't meet visitors' expectations. The search engines might stop ranking your site. You might be blacklisted. Time, money, and effort that you have invested in your SEO would then go to waste. When Google and hosting providers find out that your site is hacked, they'll provide deceptive site warnings to others. They might blacklist you. They might suspend your site. And basically, cleaning a site that is hacked is much more expensive than the amount of money that you would spend on an SSL certificate. So that is one takeaway from this whole PowerPoint is go get an SSL certificate. It is worth, not worth the extra money to not have to worry about all the threats out there.